Hello and welcome to Family and Community Engagement Workshop this evening. My name is Deborah Fiasco, and I am part of the team in the Family and Community Engagement. We are a new department that is combined between what used to be parent education, diversity awareness, and the Family Engagement Program. Tonight's webinar is being recorded and your microphone and cameras have been disabled. You can use the question and answer or the chat to put in questions. I think our presenter tonight is going to ask you right from the beginning to just give a little identifying information. So you can put it in there and I'll monitor your questions or your comments. But please remember that webinars can't be guaranteed confidentiality. So don't share any specific information about your family member or your student. If you require additional assistance, let us know in the chat and we will do our best to help. Closed caption has been activated and a recording of this webinar will be uploaded on the Family and Community Engagement website on SSD's website in a week. So just a little bit about Family and Community Engagement's upcoming events. Tonight, as you can see, we have behavior strategies for the home and community. Next week, we're hosting building social and leisure skills. We've got an autism overview in April, and we're rounding it out with the ABA doing some toilet training workshops. We also have our lunch and learns, which are during the day. You can see that 11:30 to noon. We've got two that are coming up yet. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, April 26th. And then we're going to be doing a summer engagement activities on May 24th. Again, all of these are recorded, and so you can go back and watch any of our lunch and learns from earlier in the school year or after they've been recorded. We also have something called the Family Cafe, which is a wonderful opportunity for families to join together, have some food, have some conversation, and really connect and build community and discuss topics and things that are important to them and really build, like I said, some community. And then lastly, this last flyer is our hub huddles. So the Family Cafe and these hub huddles are hosted at the hub, which is at North Technical High School. So we have coming up the Community Action Agency. Families can come and get information about rental assistance or environmental kinds of things for their home, all kinds of different like case management kind of help and assistance. There's also a food pantry at the hub that we just stocked up with the help of our wonderful coworkers at the SSD Learning Center. And then lastly, the Higher Education Consortium, which we have the date left in April, where anyone over the age of 19, whether you're served by SSD or not, you can come and talk to someone about higher education and pursuing higher education, and however that might help in your work life. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. At the end, you will receive a survey with 5 questions, but I'm going to stop sharing and introduce tonight's speaker, Keely Stevens. She and I have worked together for many years. She's a wonderful and engaging speaker, and she's a valued member of our ABA department. So I'm going to stop and let Keely share.
Okay, thank you for that very kind introduction, Deb. I appreciate that. Let me get set up here. Make sure y'all can see everything. Okay, can you see my slides, Deb?
Yes.
Okay. I did see, and you're probably answering this already, that the chat was disabled. Someone had commented that, so I just want to make sure that we get that enabled. Okay, so we get started on time. I am Keely Stevens, as Deb said. I am a board certified behavior analyst. I'm also an ABA area coordinator for SSD. I have the central region. I've been all over at SSD over my 9 years working here. And I have a great team of behavior analysts that I work with. And we love coming together to talk about these kinds of things to try to help the community and parents with any questions you might have about behaviors. I will ask if, I don't know how many participants we have, but if anyone feels like they want to mention maybe the age of their student, of their child, or if you could mention disability, anything like that, any kind of information that isn't personal information in the chat, so I know kind of what age to tailor this to, or if we have all different ages. I'll give you guys a couple seconds to answer that.
So far, we have a 10-year-old,
Okay.
and a 7-year-old with a diagnosis of ASD.
Okay. Okay. We can move on, and then if you see
Yeah.
more popping up, that's fine.
If we get some older kiddos or early childhood, I'll just pop in and give you that information.
Sounds good. Okay. So as we go through these slides, please write down any questions that you have. As Deb said, the chat is open. She'll be monitoring it. So please feel free to put your questions in and she can stop me and I can answer them. I do want to make sure though that I won't answer specific things to your child or to your situation, just because ethically I don't have information about environmental factors and all of that to give you those specific answers, but we will try to narrow it down as much as possible to give some general answers. And then, like she said at the end, if there's something specific that you want, you can surely contact me and we can talk more specifics after that. So the objectives of this course or this webinar is learning a few strategies to support behavior. It's pretty general what we're going to discuss, things you probably have heard about before, but we'll go into a little bit more detail with a couple of the categories. We'll talk about understanding how to apply the strategies, and then we will talk a little about some community resources. I do like to open it up to everyone on the webinar as well to share any resources that they have, because there's constantly new things that we're learning about in the community that are helpful. Okay. I already said that. There we go. So strategies to support behavior. We're going to talk about functions, reinforcement, consequences, ways to support, and visual supports. Deb, can I ask you a quick question? Are you seeing it says strategies to support behavior or understanding why behavior occurs?
I'm seeing strategies to support behavior.
Perfect. Okay, my screen's got a little bit of a lag here. I think our internet's just a little laggy. So something I do like to talk about before we start this is separating the person from their behavior. So I tell my team this, I tell parents this, we know behavior can be very difficult to manage, both physically and emotionally. So trying to view the behavior as something the person is experiencing and not attaching it necessarily to the person can help lessen these emotional responses that you may have. And I know that might sound a little bit funny, but I'm hoping I'm explaining that okay, that we always want to start here and try to separate the person from the behavior. It will help us to work through these things a little bit with less emotion. And I know that can be very hard. Something else we want to do is look at reinforcement of appropriate behaviors versus starting off with punishment. We are going to talk about punishment, but I want to hit pretty hard in this section on reinforcement and how to reinforce what we call an alternative or replacement behavior versus reinforcing that maladaptive behavior, which is the behavior we don't want to see. So we're going to talk about first functions of behavior and understanding why behavior occurs. This could be an entire training in and of itself, and maybe we will do that at some point. But if you haven't heard of the functions of behavior, there are 4 of them, and we'll go through each one just briefly. So attention is the first one, and that is someone engaging in a behavior in order to gain attention from someone. It could be positive or negative attention. So an example at home could be a child crying, so the parent gives them a hug. For instance, that's a positive attention. They may do something in order, like to a sibling, in order to get yelled at by the sibling, and that's negative attention. That's something we wouldn't think they'd want, but it's still attention. The second function of behavior is escape or avoidance. So this is pretending potentially to be sick so they don't have to go to school. They engage in a behavior so they can escape or avoid something that they don't want. The third one is access to tangibles. So someone could be yelling or crying until they're given an item. And then the last one is sensory. So feelings that I don't like necessarily. So it could be feelings that you like as well. So if you're experiencing, let's say, a headache, what do you do in order to get rid of the headache? What behavior do you engage in? You take medicine, maybe. So that would be to get rid of that sensory feeling. But you also could have a sensation in your body and you may bite your hand. We have students that bite their fingers and things like that, and they may be experiencing a sensation. And when they bite, it feeds the function of behavior that they need. And like I said, this could be a whole training in and of itself, but this is pretty important for you to know the basics, because how we react to behaviors is based on the function of their behavior, right? So we don't want to give someone attention if we know that they're engaging in these behaviors for attention. So we do have to know a little bit about that. So let's go dive into reinforcement. What is reinforcement? So it is a consequence, which may sound negative, but a consequence just is something that happens after something, right? So a consequence after a behavior that increases the likelihood of the behavior occurring in the future. So we want whatever it is, the behavior, whatever happens right after that, if we're reinforcing them, we're basically telling the person, whatever we're doing, we want you to keep doing that behavior. We're giving you something in order to increase that behavior in the future. So there are two types. We have positive reinforcement, which is adding something preferred. So they make their bed, they get a toy. The consequence for making their bed for that behavior is getting the toy. There is an increased likelihood that they will continue to make their bed if they really want that toy. Negative reinforcement sounds like it's something bad, but it isn't. It's taking away something that they don't like. So if they don't like making their bed, you may help them finish their bed after they start. Or like they put the sheets on and you do everything else. That is taking away a portion of something that they really don't like. Sometimes we do inadvertently reinforce behavior we don't want to see. So this is just a classic example of giving a child candy when they cry for it at the store. Everyone has probably done it. I don't have children, but I do have two lovely dogs that get lots of things, and I inadvertently or actually intentionally reinforce them for behaviors I don't want to see because I want them to be quiet. So I know that this can be difficult. But we do want to focus on adding or taking away to increase those behaviors rather than thinking about the words positive or negative. Just think, am I adding something to increase their behavior, or am I taking something away from them that they don't want to do anyway to increase the behavior we want to see? When we do this, the good target behavior that we want is more likely to happen. So just questioning, is anyone at home using either type of reinforcement? Can you think about, and if not, that's totally fine. But if you want to put in the chat, maybe an example of positive or negative reinforcement that you're using with your child. We'll skip a few seconds here and see. I think sometimes it takes a little bit to say, oh, actually, yeah, I negatively reinforced them. They didn't hit their sister. They said, please be quiet. So I told the sister to go in the other room. That's negatively reinforcing them. You're saying, thank you for not hitting. Thank you for using your words. I'll take away the annoying sister.
Okay, we do have one.
Okay.
That if he completes his bedtime routine, they reinforce it with reading a book together.
Wonderful. That is positive reinforcement. She or he is adding something after they complete the expectation. Perfect. Any others?
Not right now.
Okay. You add them on.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought negative reinforcement was taking away something preferred.
Okay, we'll get to that. That is punishment. Negative punishment is taking away something preferred. That's why I don't like to use, even though they're truly labeled positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, I like to think just saying taking away or adding or taking away something, because what you're describing is negative punishment. But we'll get to that. Great question.
Yep.
And in school, people had all kinds of issues with negative and positive punishment and reinforcement. So it is a bit confusing. Okay, so when should you deliver reinforcement? It should be contingent. So earning after or engaging in desired behavior or expected behavior. That's pretty straightforward. First you do this, then you get this. For us, first you go to work, then you get a paycheck. We don't get a paycheck unless we work, right? Typically. So it needs to be contingent. It shouldn't be available all of the time. So this can be a little bit difficult, but we want to reserve those top tier favorite items, or even if they don't work for tangible things, if it's for attention or something like that, you're saving the best for something that's a bit more difficult. So what we do see often, and I know this can be very hard at home and at school, is they shouldn't have free access to the iPad. That seems to be a pretty big one for most kids. If possible, we want to reserve that, if that's their favorite thing, for post whatever behavior it is that they have the most, or expectation that they have the most difficulty with. Decide what behaviors you want to see more of and deliver reinforcement when those occur. So I want you to feel free to really give a lot of attention, physical touch, if that's what they like, tangibles, for behavior that you really want to see increased. That is great. If they are doing something you're like, this is awesome, flood them with that reinforcement. We're going to talk about fading that here in a moment, or actually here on this slide. Set up opportunities that make it more likely children will, or students will, be successful. So try to contrive situations where your child can be more successful. If you know they struggle with putting dishes away, for example, you could put half of them up and ask them to do the rest. Or other situations where you just know this is going to be pretty hard, so I'm going to make it half the load or something like that. Then the workload, then as they engage in it, you can heavily reinforce them, and just to even do a portion of it. And initially reinforce behaviors being learned continuously. So this means I don't want you to feel like you're flooding them too much with reinforcement. They have to learn those behaviors, and they have to learn that they will be reinforced for those behaviors right away. And as they learn the behavior, and as you're flooding them with reinforcement, you can start to fade and only intermittently reinforce them for those things. So I do hear that a lot from staff at schools saying, oh, we're giving them way too much for this. They should know how to do this. But if they did, then they wouldn't be engaging in these behaviors that we're targeting. So I think that this is a super important part for us to learn about. Did we have a chat?
So Keely, we do have one question is,
Okay.
do you have any suggestions for reinforcement when a child is between two different maybe households? How do you work with that?
Is just not to get too detailed, but are you saying you're asking how to be consistent between the two?
Yeah, where there are two different sets of expectations.
Okay.
What do you have any recommendations on reinforcement for the two households?
Yeah, this is difficult. We will talk about token systems and things like that. So if I don't know what level the learner's on, you can tailor it to be very mature, or a lower level if that's what the student needs. A visual of some sort might be nice to send to the other household, and teaching the other parent or whoever it is how to engage with that. And also we'll talk a little bit about preference assessments. I think that, I don't know if they have access to the same reinforcements at both houses, but doing a preference assessment to see what they want at each house, and then having that specific thing maybe like locked up somewhere. Like I said, the iPad, they shouldn't have full access. Maybe you have like a tier of reinforcement at each house, and then they have a token system, for instance, to earn that, or an expectation chart or something like that. I don't know if that was helpful. If I didn't answer it correctly, save it for the end and we can chat more discreetly about that. Okay. So selecting, was there something else, Deb? I saw another chat pop up.
They said, thank you. It was helpful.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry, I'm not trying to be choppy with this. So selecting reinforcers, that's kind of what I was just talking about. So reinforcers for one student may not be the same for others. We do see that a lot where people say, well, everybody loves the iPad or everybody loves Cheez-Its. Well, not everybody does. Some people really don't think about I like all kinds of different things. Of course, I like a lot of general reinforcers that most adults like, but there are very specific things that I like as well. And we have to be able, especially if we have a nonverbal student, we have to be able to get a preference assessment and figure out what it is that they like and not just assume. So we want to consider their age, interest, appetites, literally appetite or appetite for things in life. What is naturally available is very important because again, we want to at some point have them very independent and be able to access whatever it is in the environment to keep themselves happy and engaged at some point, and have these leisure skills. Novel items and activities. We could potentially just observe the student and see what novel items, that means just anything in the environment that they typically don't play with. What do they go to? And then we want to make a list of these items and keep track of what works. It may be super easy and you don't need that, but we do have lots and lots of kids that it is very difficult to find something that is highly preferred and that it may change literally every 30 seconds. And that is the case. That is very difficult to do. So keeping track of what works is super important. Something that this is pretty tried and true. If you have a behavior that you want to see and it isn't increasing, or we have behaviors that you don't want to see and they are increasing, you may not have a strong enough reinforcer. You may think that the iPad is their favorite thing, but in reality, they love spending time, I don't know, brushing the dog or something like that. And you just didn't even know it. So kind of just observing their natural ways of life and see what things they like. So what are some examples of things that your kids like? What are their favorite things?
So we've got a comment that pretty sure that her son is only motivated by gummy worms and the tablet and has too much access to that tablet.
Yep. That's a hard thing. The other thing is people are scared to remove the iPad or the tablet because they've had so much access to it. They're scared to see what would happen, what behaviors are going to occur. But I will tell you, if you have the right structures in place and you have support to know what to do, you will decrease those behaviors. You will see an influx of the behaviors, but eventually they will decrease again, if you have the right support and are doing it correctly. So make sure that if you have aggressive behaviors or anything like that, that you're consulting with a behavior analyst or someone else within the school district or at home to help you go through that. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. No.
There's a comment.
Okay.
Looks like there's some concern about overusing something that might be a reinforcer. The limiting of interactions with a tablet and how that might affect things.
Yeah, satiation. I mean, that's something that all of us experience. If you have too much of something, then it's not as cool anymore. This is kind of a silly example, but I just got back from Canada. I eat pretty healthy all the time. We went on vacation. I kind of flooded myself with all of the things that typically would reinforce me, like nachos and ice cream and things like that. And now I'm kind of like, I don't really want any of that. And I would die to have that before. So that's a good example. Silly example, but it's an example. Okay. So you may not need to do, like I said, a formal preference assessment. I'm going to show you just a very easy one. Sampling some things could be helpful. You could just ask for some assistance from a behavioral provider, or you could observe your child. It's called free operant. You can just see what they go to. Like if you take them to a toy store or you take them to a library, just see what they migrate to on their own without prompting them. There are all these fancy preference assessments called multiple stimulus without and with replacement and things like that. I'm just going to show you one real quick. I hope this works because I'm in presentation view. Come on. Can you see this, Deb?
No, it doesn't look like it's playing.
Shoot. Okay, give me 1 second. And I hope that it will share sound. There we go. How about now?
Yep.
Okay.
Here you go. Let me trade you the Rubik's Cube for the book. Here. Let me trade you. Here's a car. Let me trade you the ball. Awesome. Thank you. Pick one. Thank you.
Okay. Let me go back to this and I'm going to describe what we saw here. Maybe if it will let me go. There we go. So this is a paired stimulus. So basically it's for students who can't make it. They can make a choice, but they can't make a choice for much more than 2 items at a time. So what the person was doing was they had 4 different things laid out. They said, try this, try this, try this, try this. Then they went back to the first 2 things and said, now pick one between the 2. And they just basically make a hierarchy of things that they like. Okay. Come on now. There we go. So an example, I have tons of examples of how to track things, and the people on here now maybe don't have any questions about this or even need this, but there may be others that watch this. We can give you access to tracking preferences or other preference assessments and how to run them, more of the basic ones. And it doesn't even have to be this complex. It could just be literally saying he liked the ball more than he liked the Rubik's Cube, something like that. Questions about that? Some examples of reinforcers. You guys know pretty much what your kids like, but sometimes people need examples. There's some examples here from early childhood all the way up to adults. Sometimes people don't think this with adults. People like responsibilities. Money, obviously, that's a big thing for adults. Food is in all categories. We try to avoid food as much as possible, but sometimes that is something that you can use. Music. Something I don't have on here is time with people. We have kids at school that want to be with a certain principal, and that's what they work for. I love that. Or time with a friend or something like that, or just taking a walk outside by themselves. Whatever it is that serves them is what a good reinforcer would be. And again, I'll just say this, that we do want it to be as naturally occurring as possible. Because when they're in the real world, no matter what that looks like, they may not get exactly what they want. They won't get exactly what they want. So we want them to be able to be a little bit flexible and pick maybe something within the natural environment. Delivering reinforcement. So now we talked about what it is, maybe some examples of that, how to determine what the reinforcement is, and then how do you deliver it? So you would, again, think about those preferred reinforcers from the preference assessment that we just talked about. A couple other keys is for sure that it is contingent on behavior. So we're not just reinforcing them for nothing. If we're talking about a specific behavior, we're going to do it based on the expectation that we want, contingent on that they get what they want. Immediate. So this may not always be possible, but when we have students with pretty severe behaviors or depending on cognitive levels and functioning, we really want to deliver reinforcement within 20 seconds, if possible, 20 to 30 seconds. We do have people that can delay. They can handle that like an adult. I can handle getting a paycheck, I think, for 2 weeks. I think I can handle being delayed that long, right? But sometimes when you're younger, you need immediate responses, and they need to learn that as soon as this behavior happens, look at what I get. I'm going to do this behavior in the future. We do want to pair most times with a verbal specific praise. So they know you did a really awesome job putting those sheets on. Here's a gummy bear or whatever it is. So they know the reason that they're getting the high five or the reason that they're getting the gummy bear. Some students don't like verbal praise. So this obviously is specific to your child. And size does matter. So I wouldn't be giving a student Chick-fil-A for something that they know, like let's say Chick-fil-A would be great for me. That would be ultimate. If I know that your child can 100% make their bed, but they can't vacuum or dust or something like that, I would not be giving them Chick-fil-A for making the bed. I'd be giving it to them for something that's much more difficult for them to do. And basically just match the behavior to the reinforcement pretty much, and reserve the good stuff for those behaviors that are much more difficult for them. Let me pull this up. Stop sharing and go here. This is the silly clip.
Site security is a never-ending commitment. Just looking out for yours. I'm talking about it.
So this is a silly clip that you may have seen before, but it is from a popular TV show that I've actually never watched, but this is a great example of reinforcing and shaping behavior.
Are you finished?
Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon. I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
Yes, please.
Okay, so like I said, that's kind of a silly example, but it's a real example of how he was shaping her behavior using chocolate. Obviously, that's something that she liked. She was willing to change her behavior from what she typically exhibited, and realized, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I'm in your seat now, but I know I'm going to get chocolate. And he verbally reinforced her as well. So just a silly little example. Okay, so the next thing is token economies. This is a way that you can deliver things. And someone asked earlier about some visuals. I've got a couple coming here, but we also could send you specific visuals if you would like that. We'll just have to put that in a chat and Deb can let me know. So token economies are just a way to deliver reinforcement. This is contrived. This isn't natural necessarily. The ones I'm going to show you, what we like to do is, depending on the student, they may be in a token economy forever, depending on the functioning level and the behaviors that they're exhibiting. But what we like to do is take it from a very strong, stringent token economy and fade it into something much more natural as they progress and as they mature. So basically, it's a bridge between the desired behavior and a reward. It gives them a visual to say, here's what I want. Here's my expected and unexpected behaviors. That's how I get to what I want, is doing X, Y, and Z. It can be written, visual. It could be some kind of tangible, like tokens. We always have the child give input, and that can be a preference assessment too. They could point to their favorite picture, and that's what the tokens are going to be. Typically, we do 3 to 5 tokens equal a reinforcer, but it 100% depends on the child. If they're exhibiting behaviors every 30 seconds, they may only have to do 1 token and they earn a reinforcer. And then as the behaviors span out, I have a student that we move now from 3 to now 10 tokens. So as they're progressing, we're increasing the tokens. So I'm going to show you a couple examples. Hopefully you guys can see this okay. So here's more of a very typical one in this bottom left-hand corner. There's 4 pennies, actual pennies that are Velcroed to just a manila folder. I am working for, there's a piece of blank Velcro there. And on the back of the manila folder are visuals of what they're working for. They put it on there. And then after they earn the pennies, they get whatever they're working for. That's very basic. There's one up in the right-hand corner that's Batman, just to show a little bit more something that they like. There's a chore chart here with stars. They have to work a little bit longer or harder to get what they want. So it's a little bit more delayed response. This one up here in the left-hand corner and the bottom right-hand corner. I don't know why these are separated. They should be together. This is much more of a mature system that we have for some of our older students, or students that can, that they're reading and understanding money and things like that. It is a little bit more of value to them. For instance, on this isn't real money that they're earning. They're not earning $10 for doing homework, but they're earning 10 fake dollars that we made, and they can cash in their money certain times. It could be 2 times a day. It could be once a week. It could be 2 times a month, depending on the ability and how long they can wait. But they're actually cashing in fake money for whatever it is they're working for. In this case, on the bottom right, we have fines. So if they engage in any behavior, if they're arguing, if they're engaging in property destruction, anything like that, they could get a fine. That is kind of a whole nother level. It's called response cost of how to engage with a student. And it is a punishment procedure. It isn't always useful, but it is something that you could do. It just depends on the level of your student. Questions about this, visuals or anything like that? I've got a little brief video. We're not going to practice here, but I'm going to show you this video.
That's been applying for residency right now.
Me luck. Grammarly has again been a lifesaver with my application.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Literacy Lunch. We're going to be talking about something new today. It's going to be managing behaviors, so stay tuned. Sometimes it can be tricky to keep your child engaged for an extended period of time. They start asking questions such as how much longer or when can I take my break. This can be very distracting and take time away from the lesson. The trick is to prevent those questions from arising at all. Token economies are a great way to keep students on task. They're simple and easy to use and can be used in every lesson. Here is an example of one. In order to start using the token economy, you're going to want to introduce the concept to your student first. Ask them the question, what are you working for today? For this example, our student will be working for their break. In order for the student to take their break, they need to have all 5 stars down here. Once the student has collected all 5 stars, then they're able to take their break. There's many different ways that a student can earn their stars. Maybe they earn a star after every activity they complete, or maybe they get a star every 10 minutes that they remain sitting in their chair and paying attention. Since you know your student the best, you'll be the one deciding how they get their stars. You can also get creative with it. It doesn't have to be stars that your student is working for. Maybe your student likes superheroes, so you can have them work for superheroes instead. Or maybe you have an underwater themed token economy. The possibilities are endless, and you're free to customize it however you'd like. Eventually, the goal of a token economy is to fade them out. Over time, we want to expand the amount of time it takes for your student to receive a star. That way, their attention span goes up, and the lesson is interrupted less frequently. It's important to note that this behavioral strategy can take time to implement. Your student may take a couple lessons to catch on, but don't give up, they'll get there. If you decide to try out the token economy, we would love to know.
Okay. So that's also just a brief example. She talks about several of the things that I was talking about. Let me get back to my screen. I don't know if a comment popped up, Deb, but something that she did mention, we talked about fading, that's important, but also and she's talking about a school example, but just think how you could use that at home. Something else is, just because you set out to think in your head, okay, I really want them to, whatever it is at home, put the dishes away or something like that, or put their socks up or something. You may have to think, okay, do they really have the skill? If they do the entire skill, do they get super upset? Yes, the answer is yes. Then back it up a little bit. I'm only going to make you pick up the sock and put it on the table. I know that sounds a bit trite or, it's kind of silly, but you may have to back it way up and then reinforce them as soon as they do it. Once they get consistency, now we're picking up the sock and we're taking it to the laundry room. Once they have consistency, we're taking it and putting it actually in the laundry bin. So those kinds of things, you can adjust what the expectation is and just you being a little bit more flexible and how you're delivering that stuff. Questions?
I don't see any right now, but I will find a place to interrupt if I do.
Okay, thank you. So I did just talk about this as being realistic with your expectations. Thinking again, what's reinforcing for your student, for your child, deciding what kind of token system might be good for them and how often you're going to, I think, because it becomes very overwhelming that you decide how often you're going to reinforce, and then you can kind of start being a little bit willy-nilly with it as time goes on. But I would say if you're, at the very beginning, I would say I'm going to reinforce every time they do X, and just start off like that. It would be a little bit easier for you to process. And planning for teaching. So teaching them the skill and realizing that maybe they don't have as much of the skill as you think that they have. Okay, we're going to skip shaping and we're going to talk about fading reinforcement. So this is super important for independence and life functioning. I already mentioned this before, but when you put reinforcement in place, there should be a plan to fade right away. So fading is based on how your kid responds. So if you're teaching the sock to put the socks away and they're really, or toothbrushing or something that may have more complex steps, you cannot start fading until you see consistency with whatever step that they're on or whatever behavior they're on. If you start pushing and saying, well, now I'm going to fade to, now they have to have 10 stars in order to get what they want, that's going to be very difficult and you're probably going to see more behaviors. You need to go nice and slow and make sure that you're consistent. If you see behaviors occur, we're going to get into some troubleshooting here. It could just be because your reinforcement system isn't tweaked correctly. So what if they don't earn all of their tokens? You may determine the next day, okay, 5 tokens is too much. I need to do 3. They have to be able to access that reinforcement before the behavior occurs. So think about how quickly do you need to give reinforcement? What if they change what they want after earning? That's okay. That's something else that we need to be flexible with. If you start off saying, what do you want to work for? I like to work for the iPad. They get all their stars and then they get to it and they're like, no, I wanted a Twinkie. As long as it's okay and that's accessible, the Twinkie's fine. What if the behavior occurs right after they have earned their tokens? This can be very difficult. It depends on the situation. You may just have to have them do something like a little bit of a compliance trial, basically waiting until the behaviors have ceased, and then have them do something very small that you know that they can do. Even if that's touching their head and touching their nose, they earn their reinforcement right away. And what if the system isn't working? It typically, again, is because of one of the other things that we've talked about. Your expectations are too high. You don't have a strong enough reinforcer. So they're thinking, I'm not putting away these socks that I hate because what you're trying to give me isn't something I even really like. So going back to try to figure out what it is that they really like. Other things to consider if it isn't working is, did you provide the reinforcement during a behavior or immediately following a behavior? So there's a difference between setting them up for success and bribing them. So if we start off by saying, what is it you're working for? You got that from the get-go. They know that I can't engage in behavior. I need to do what I need to do in order to earn what I need. If they engage in behavior while they're still earning tokens, that's totally fine, as long as they're still working towards whatever the expectation is. But at the end, they need to not engage in behavior for you to give them the reinforcement. And that may have been a bit confusing what I'm saying. I don't want you reinforcing right after a behavior, because they'll learn that, oh, if I did what they said and then I hit them, they still gave me the cookie. They need to know that the only way they get the cookie is when they're not engaging in that behavior and they are completing whatever task or whatever assignment is that you give them. That's the contingency part. Did the child understand what you were reinforcing? Did you give them verbal specific praise, or did you point to whatever it was if they don't like the verbal specific praise, so they know that, oh, when I did that, I got the cookie? Are you reinforcing heavy enough, thick enough? Have you tried different reinforcers? Okay. Next section is on consequences. So we will talk a bit about punishment. I'm going to speed up a tad because I'm looking at the clock. So notes on punishment. It's a consequence where we're adding something that isn't preferred after a behavior, or we're taking away something preferred after a behavior in an effort to decrease that behavior. So someone asked that question earlier. So taking away tokens is a punishment. It's called response cost. Make sure you have a good reinforcement in place, because we can't just rely on punishment. They have to work together. So punishment can produce an emotional response. This is why people like to avoid it, because if we do see a heightened response, we may pull punishment and just rely on reinforcement, but they do work nicely hand in hand. You do not use punishment alone, though. Children can definitely habituate to punishment. It does not teach a behavior. Reinforcement will teach something, because you're telling them this behavior you just did, perfect. Here's what you get. You're earning a reinforcer because of the behavior you exhibited. They don't, when you punish them, you're telling them, no, do not do that behavior. I want you to stop that, but you're not giving them an alternative behavior to engage in. So you definitely want to focus on reinforcement. A couple things that about punishment: if a behavior isn't decreasing, it's not punishment. The definition of punishment is that you're adding or removing something to decrease a behavior. And what you think might be punishment may actually be reinforcement. Like we talked about earlier, sometimes people like when you yell at them. We do have kids and adults that like to have that, get someone riled up, get a teacher riled up. That is actually reinforcing. It's not punishing. We do have people that will yell and say, I'm going to call your mom. That may actually fuel their fire. That might be reinforcement. So we have to be careful with that. Talking about extinction, this is an alternative to punishment. This is withholding reinforcement for a behavior that used to be reinforced. So what used to work for your child will no longer get them what they want based on those functions of behavior. So basically, if they yelled in the store and they always got candy so you could keep them quiet, you put it on extinction, which means you will no longer reinforce that behavior. And a lot of times, and most times, we see the behaviors increase. So all of our graphs, it increases. But if we're consistent and we do not reinforce that behavior, it will drop off. They will potentially try harder and harder to get what they want. And then when they realize the reinforcement is gone, this is how I get reinforcement now, they will stop engaging in that behavior. I already gave you the example, but if you used to give your child a cookie at the store when they cried to calm them down, and you decide to stop giving it to them when they cried, that would be an extinction procedure. So they could cry harder, they could slam their fists down, they could do all kinds of things, but you want to wait it out. You also want to give them a replacement behavior to get what they want. So how could they get the cookie? They need to understand what is the replacement behavior. We will skip that because that's a little bit of an interactive. So I'll play this last little. Actually, I'm going to skip this guy. Hold on 1 second. It was a Family Guy clip that is funny, and it's just an annoying, one of the kids annoying the parent. Okay, so a task analysis. This is going a little bit more in depth about how your child maybe needs to learn. Breaking down basically even more, not a token system, but how can they earn things? It could be potentially that they don't know the skill, and this is how we could break down the skill into smaller parts. So potentially thinking about like tying your shoe or anything that requires steps, brushing your teeth, making your bed, anything. There's whole chaining, forward chaining, and backward chaining. And I can give you all of these definitions and ways to do them. But basically, a lot of times we use forward chaining. So it's one step at a time. With toothbrushing, they do the first step alone, and then you prompt the rest of the steps. And as they get the first and second step, you'll only prompt the steps that they still need until they finish the entire task. That's a task analysis. You're breaking it down into tiny, tiny steps and teaching them those steps. Here's some examples of a shower routine. It says getting undressed, turning on the water, get in the shower, wet your hair and face, all the way through. You may be prompting them physically or verbally for some of these things, or with a visual, and you may not have to. I do have an example of this at the grocery store, but I don't know if we'll have time to watch that. We've only got 10 minutes left. So think about where in your life or with your students that you could create a task analysis. and really look at the task and break it down and think, okay, wait a minute, I skipped this. I have to grab the shoe. I have to sit down. I have to put the shoe in front of me. I have to put my foot in the shoe. Think of all the steps that the student may need and write all of them down. They may have some of the steps and you can mark them off, but I would break it down into the babiest steps possible. Some visual supports to help with all of these things, some prompting techniques. You can do anything from safety rules, routines, calendars. You can do video modeling, emotional regulation, community, lots and lots of visual supports. We have tons of resources that we can share if you need it. Some people have them on lanyards, on their keys, all around their house. This might be helpful for the person that was asking about 2 different households, having the same visuals across the house, both households. First, then boards, token systems are all considered visuals as well. I did see Teachers Pay Teachers has, there was a few things I want to show here, some good task analyses that are free, definitely tons of visuals that you could access. You definitely want to make sure that the type of visuals aren't just all board maker. That's something that people typically use. You may want to take pictures of your students engaging in activities and use those so they can see themselves engaging in washing dishes, and then you can prompt using those visuals. So just a couple of tips for how to use all of these things. Routines are key across as many settings as possible, having consistency, letting the kids have some controlled choices about what they're doing, giving them choices before they start is really helpful. They feel like you respect them more. Making sure that you have expectations and you stick to them and that they're realistic for the things that you want them to do, that they're not too difficult or not too easy. Use your visual supports. Be prepared to be calm and try to work through things and realize in your head, okay, no matter what happens, they know that they have to do X to get what they want. I'm going to stick with it no matter how long it takes. As long as they're safe, you have to intervene if there's anything that would be harmful to them or someone else, and reinforce the heck out of whatever goes well. So they know this is awesome. We made it through it. We're doing a good job together. Establish routines for specific times a day. Maintain those routines. I'll say that again. I put that in here a couple times, really being consistent. I do have something on here, this Kickstarter, it's that octopus watch. So depending on the level of your student, there's a watch that prompts the kid to brush their teeth, whatever routine you want. It will, I believe that they vibrate now, but they make noise. They have a cute little visual so they can see what they're supposed to be doing. And they can basically check mark a task analysis saying, eat your breakfast, make your bed, whatever the routine is that you want them to do, grab your backpack, any of those types of things. Okay. I do have a few things for doctor visits. I think bringing visual supports is super important. We do have a list of doctors that specialize more with students that have an AU diagnosis. Setting up a practice visit at home or speaking with the doctor to see what to expect when you walk in the door, potentially bringing the child to the doctor's office before the appointment to get them prepared if they have any issues with that or if they're nervous, making sure you're bringing in any communication systems that they have, let them express their feelings, bring reinforcement, discuss what's going to happen prior to, so pre-teaching is super important. Some community supports that we have a whole list of ABA supports that we can share if anyone needs any at-home services or some resources in that way. There's respite care, the regional center, the parent resource center, FACE, like Deb and all of these wonderful group of ladies. They have all kinds of resources. And like she said, there's tons of trainings coming up and webinars and some really cool stuff like the cafe. That sounded really neat to be able to meet with other parents and social groups and things like that. Does anyone have any support groups that they would like to share in the chat so others can see maybe some resources that we haven't mentioned. I know I kind of flew through the end of that. I apologize. I got stuck on a couple of those slides and got excited about them and had to fly through the very end. So if you want to put any questions or resources that you have in the chat, that would be fabulous. Or if there's further information that you want from us as far as links or visuals or anything like that, that I kind of brushed over towards the end, please feel free to put that in the chat and we can send that to you. And I will open it up for any questions at this time.
And they can always contact us, and we'll send out the information from this presentation tonight to the participants. But they can contact FACE. Our main is face@ssdmo.org, or you can call our main number, 314-6. No, that's my cell number.
100-989.
Yeah, 8460. Let's see. I think we did have something. Thank you. This was very helpful.
Great.
Copy of the presentation and specifically the task analysis and some of the examples.
Sure.
Is what people are looking
I will note that.
for.
I will note that because the presentation just has some screenshots of things that we use, but I can send you, Deb, specific links to free task analyses, token systems, all of that good stuff.
Okay. And there again is our information that you can email us at FACE or give us a call and ask for some of the more specific information, or we can connect you with Keely or someone else who can answer some of your questions and maybe help with some of the support needs. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Everybody have a great night.